With lockdowns being lifted around the world, many countries are beginning to ease border restrictions to allow for international tourism during the coronavirus pandemic. So far, the results, especially for tropical destinations, have not been great. The U.S. Virgin Islands welcomed tourists back to its shores in June, but they were forced to reinstate a stay-at-home order and close up shop after COVID-19 cases doubled in July. That isn't stopping airlines from offering flights for leisure travel during the pandemic. So is it safe to travel by air yet? Let's start with the plane itself. The idea of being crammed together with strangers in a small enclosed space for hours may seem like a bad idea during a pandemic, especially since the virus is primarily transmitted during prolonged personal contact with an infected person through respiratory droplets from them coughing, sneezing, or talking. Even though masks are required on board, some airlines have now relaxed physical distancing rules and are booking flights to full capacity again. But the risk of contracting the coronavirus on board isn't as high as you think.
The airplane ride itself is probably the lowest risk event in all of this in that sense. So if people are wearing a mask, airplanes have HEPA filters, the air is constantly streamed appropriately. People directly around the people who have COVID are at slightly higher risk, but that's hopefully mitigated by the fact that people are wearing masks and not taking them down as much as needed.
That doesn't mean there's zero chance of catching COVID-19 on a plane. According to a research paper by MIT, the chances of catching coronavirus from a passenger on a full flight when all the coach seats are filled is about 1 in 4,300. Those odds drop to 1 in 7,700 when all the middle seats on board are left empty. Back in July, 17 international flights and 14 domestic flights were flagged by the Canadian government for possible exposure to the virus. And even though to date there have been no confirmed cases of passenger-to-passenger transmission of COVID-19 on commercial flights, there have been reports of probable transmission.
Especially with COVID, there is no such thing as perfectly safe.
According to many health experts, it's everything that comes before and after the actual flight that poses the real threat. And that starts with how you get to the airport in the first place. Are you driving yourself, or are you taking a taxi or rideshare? What are the chances the driver is infected? How's the airflow in the car? Is the driver wearing a mask? Is it a good enough mask?
And then if I'm walking through the airport, how many people am I going to be within 3 feet of, right? And again, what's their mask like? How does it compare to my mask? So there's this long list of uncertainties.
The biggest risk of all is not even the journey, but the destination, especially if you're traveling to the United States.
Right now, COVID is not under control in the States, and they don't have consistent messaging. They're not using masks. They're not doing the physical distancing. There have been protests, and that which is understandable, but it sounds like it's chaos there. And you put a lot of people's health and lives at risk by doing something that's not essential.
Not to mention what happens if you do get sick while you're there.
You may not be able to get to your flight home. When you come back to Canada, you'll need to go in quarantine. You may not have your medical costs paid for. You may not have your testing costs paid for.
So whether or not you decide to get on a plane and get away during the coronavirus pandemic, it's important to ask yourself, is it worth it?
Thanks for watching Global News. If you want to stay up to date on the latest breaking national and international news, be sure to subscribe to our channel.